Hello YouTube! Over the past year I have been playing free-to-play accounts, both long-term and speedrunning the game to test how free-to-play friendly the game is. With patch 3.2 marking the 2-year anniversary of the game and many new players starting, this is a good time to summarize what I've learned in a new player guide. This guide is going to be a bit different from other videos because I have started a new account in 3.2 that will be used to demonstrate everything over a series of videos, with the goal of teaching new players how to set up their accounts for success in the endgame. This account started on April 9th on the release of patch 3.2 when we pulled Clara on our starter banner. Honkai Star Rail has a lot of story, and early on your priority should be to increase your account level by completing quests. I should mention first of all, however, that while leveling Pom Pom will give you fuel as a reward, do not convert this into energy to level faster. You want to save these until the very end after you've completed all the quests in the game and exhausted their experience and reached level 60, which is the best time to start farming relics for your characters. I will cover relic farming in a video next week when this account reaches that point. At level 20, you will unlock the ability to farm trace materials. Trace and ascension materials is the only thing you should be using your energy for while leveling. You want to eventually max out your character's traces, but doing this takes 10 days of only farming traces. Most characters will get left at 9 out of 10 trace level because of this, but even this takes 7 days per character. In addition, you are limited by Echo of War materials, which you're only getting 6 to 8 per week. So most of your characters early on will end up at 7 out of 10 trace level. But even this takes 5 days per character. For 2 teams of 4 characters each, that's nearly a month and a half of just farming traces. That's a really long time. So how can we make this more manageable? First, like I said, get a head start by farming trace materials as soon as possible. Second, build as few characters as possible. You want to pick a core of 8 to 10 characters that you will focus on in the first month and only build them. Finally, there are some additional sources of trace materials in the game. The first is the Ember Exchange. On a new account, you're doing a lot of pulls early on, so I recommend buying out every trace material on the Ember Exchange that you need in the first month. Second, the Divergent Universe provides tiers that can be used for traces. Finally, Swarm Disaster gives a lot of resource boxes that can be converted into trace materials for older characters. The Aurum Alley event also gives these boxes, so prioritize completing those first. Since you're not farming any relics, just use whatever 4-star relics you find from questing. This is enough to complete any quests, but you will struggle a bit during farming. While leveling, you will probably receive many friend requests from high-level players. Accept one of these, and for farming, use one of their max level DPS as your primary carry. This will make farming a lot easier and faster. Completing the campaign will leave you around level 48. You'll still have a lot of companion quests and side quests to complete. In addition, you have about 2 levels of experience from completing simulated universe worlds, and a lot of the old events provide experience from completing them. Doing all of this content will take some time, but completing it will get you to Trailblaze level 60, at which point you can start thinking about the endgame. In the meantime, doing all of this will provide you with plenty of Stellar Jade to start pulling, so let's talk about that now. Most players think of Star Rail as a game where you collect characters, but in my experience, teams in this game are not very flexible, and you lose a lot of damage by straying from the optimal team. So you will have a lot more success by thinking of this as a game where you build teams. Because of this limitation, Star Rail banners tend to rerun an entire team together, so that you can pull it all at once. So for example, Acheron is a good one. Acheron is rerunning, and she is the primary DPS of her team. In addition, the DPS is going to generally rerun with their best 5-star support, in which case Zhao Chu is here. In addition, the DPS will usually rerun with their best 4-star support. in this case Pella. By pulling both the DPS and their 5-star support, you are very likely to get E6 on the 4-star support, which is going to make them in some cases competitive with 5-star options. Finally, in Acheron's case, she's also getting Gallagher, who is her best 4-star sustain, but arguably he's everybody's 4-star sustain. In Castorese's case, it's a bit more complicated because it's not all in one banner, but in the previous banner we had Tribby, which was her best 5-star support, and in the next patch we're getting her best 5-star sustain, which is important for her since healing is so essential to her kit. So you can see how the banners are designed in such a way that within a patch or two, you are getting an entire team. There's never a lot of distance between. So in the future, if you are planning to pull in a new DPS, you should really be planning on pulling both their DPS as well as their best 5-star support. So you should be saving Stellar Jade for 2 characters worth of pulls. But for a new player, starting out in patch 3.2, the thing that you should know is that by completing everything that's in the game, there's a bit over 400 pulls worth of Stellar Jade in the game. In addition, every patch, you're getting about 100 pulls, 120 in the case of 3.2. So within the first month of playing, you can have 500 pulls of Stellar Jade. If you have the worst luck, this means you can guarantee 3 characters off of these banners. So if you wanted to pull Castorese, Acheron, and Zhao Chu, you could absolutely do that by completing everything that's available to you in the game. Beyond that, that's the worst case scenario. The expected value for number of pulls you need for a character averages out to 93.7. So over 500 pulls, you're actually expecting to get 4 to 5 characters worth of pulls. So assuming bad luck, you get 4 pulls. So you could still get all 3 of these, and then you could also pull Fugue if you wanted, or you could get a light cone for one of the DPS. It's up to you. In my case, I did a poll from my community, and they wanted me to pull Castorese for this project, but either Castorese or Acheron are very powerful options to start with. However, I want to give special attention to Fugue, which is going to be my other pull off of this banner in addition to Castorese. Star Rail requires 2 teams of 4 characters each for the endgame. Most new players will have a good idea of what they want their first team to be, but won't be so sure about the second. The game actually provides you with a starter endgame team in the form of 4-star Super Break. Harmony, MC, March, and Gallagher form the core of this team. The 4th team member can be a nihility character of what element you need for a stage. This team is already very friendly for a new account, because it mostly doesn't care about traces, just break effect and speed on relics, and is entirely free. But in 3.2, we have the rare opportunity to upgrade it to a meta team for very cheap. We pick up a free Ruin Mei from the store, and from 1 cost character, we grab Fugue. Fugue does 2 important things on this team. First, she frees up the main character to switch to Remembrance and play on the other team. The second thing it does is solve this team's bad performance in Pure Fiction by allowing us to pick up a free Himiko from the selector and play her with Herta. For only 1 cost, we have a complete endgame team that should do well on most stages, and we can either use as a placeholder until we decide on our second team, or upgrade it with Boothill, Rappa, or even Anaxa. Now's a good time to talk about long-term investment and the kind of progress your account as a free-to-play can make over the course of a year. So recently I did a video showcasing my free-to-play account that started out last April in the Robin first patch, and that was showing my Firefly and Facial vertical investment. You can go to that video for a more detailed review of that, but for the purposes of this video, I just want to show the progress and history of that account and how it played out. So as we discussed, a new account will have access to about 4 to 5 pulls, and then in addition to that, over the coming year, you will expect about another 10 characters worth, so for a total of 15 characters over the course of a year. In my case, I started out in Robin patch, and even though I had ratio, I knew I wanted Firefly, so I decided to skip Robin and Boot Hill, and I got Firefly at E1S1 and Ruin May, which was rerunning alongside her at E1S1 as well. And so as we said, you have 4 to 5 characters worth of Jade, but at this point I had plenty of Stellar Jade left over, but none of the characters interested me, so I skipped Jade and Yoon Lee, and then I decided to skip Zhao Chu because I decided I didn't want to have Acheron on this account. However, Fei Xiao, I fell in love with her because of her tomboy personality, so when her banner came around, I pulled her at S1, I pulled Robin, who was running alongside her, at E0, and I pulled Lingsha at E0. And so this is the general structure I would recommend for your first 4 to 5 pulls. Get 2 main DPS, they're 2 primary supports, and I do recommend getting 1 5-star sustain. I think in the long term it makes the game just a lot less frustrating, more pleasant to play. I did also pull light counts, but we'll talk about that later. So after Lingsha, I still had some Stellar Jade left over, but when Rappa came around, we already knew about Fugue and what her kit was going to do, so I decided to skip Rappa, and on Sunday's banner, even though he's a great character, because we're waiting on Fugue and because he doesn't really fit into the teams that we've built so far, I skipped him. And on Fugue's banner, I had plenty of Stellar Jade because of having skipped the previous banners. So when she came around, I pulled her at E1 S1. After that, on the Herta banner, I did have some Stellar Jade left over, but at this point I was committed to this vertical Fei Xiao Firefly project. So instead of pulling her or Aglaya, I instead took my Robin to E1, and I took my Lingsha to E1 as well. And then after that, I skipped Medei, skipped Tribby. On this banner, I skipped Castoris, but obviously I have plenty of Stellar Jade at this point, so on this banner, I actually upgraded Fugue to E2 S1. And so this is what my account looks like now. So some key takeaways from this. The most important point to talk about is light cones. Most guides will tell you to skip light cones as free to play. And what if I told you that you could pull a 5th character that increases your team's performance by 50%? Would you pull that character? Probably, right? That's what your DPS 5-star light cone represents. Most calculations will say that actually your light cone only gives 20 to 25% increase over the alternatives, but those guides are usually comparing the premium light cone to either S5 limited 4-star light cones, or they are comparing it to even a battle pass light cone, which as a new free-to-play player you just don't have access to. So when you compare the limited light cones to the banner, to the actual light cones you have access to, which is the Herta store light cones, that light cone ends up being a good 40 to 50% DPS increase. And so in general, I do encourage and support pulling on these light cones for DPS, especially since the best way to get limited 4-star light cones like Dance 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 or Resolution Shines tends to be on the light cone banners. However, that being said, the light cones for your supports are probably less necessary So characters like Ruin May can get away with Dance Dance Dance, and characters like Lingsha can get away with Quid Pro Quo, the Action Advanced Light Cone, the Break Effect Light Cone. There's plenty of alternatives that are good enough for them. The power that you get from them probably is not justified. So for example, on Ruin May, instead of Ruin Maze and Lingsha's Light Cone, I really should have probably just used that to get my Firefly to E2S1, and that would have made that account a lot more powerful. Second thing to notice is if you're doing vertical investment, the budget is very tight, and you won't always have the Stellar Jade that you need when a rerun happens, and you can't get everything that you may want. So for example, when Aventurine reran in the fall, I just didn't have the budget for him because I was saving for Fugue. So, this team is still missing stuff. Like, I would like my Facial to be at E2. I would like Aventurine at least at E0 for this team. But that's just going to have to wait, and that's stuff that's going to have to come in the coming year. The second thing to note is, you're looking at this and thinking, okay, well, this budget is pretty tight. I can't really pull anything else, really. Like, Sunday's a good character, Herd is a good character, but if we're committed to this vertical thing, it's hard to stray from it. So why would I want to do this? Well, I did a poll of my community, at least, and comparing vertical versus horizontal investment, and the vertical players seem to be having a better time overall with the game. There are some technical reasons for that, because vertical players will just have better relics overall, and they'll have a lot more flexibility with their relics. Like, they'll have Eagle sets, and they will have Von Vax sets and so forth that let them do stuff like Zero Cycle without a sustain. But, that may be a pretty boring way to play if you only have access to 8 characters. So, I think that a more interesting option is a third option between vertical and horizontal, which is you run your favorite character is vertical, and then you have the second team be horizontal. So for example, let's say in this case, I wanted to have Fei Xiao be my vertical team because I love her as a character. So I would take her to E2S1 instead of Firefly. But in fact, I would not even take Firefly to S1. Instead, I would keep her at E0, so that frees up 1 character pull. I wouldn't have upgraded Fei Xiao this much. So that frees up 3 character pulls. And so that gets us 4 characters worth of pulls, and so this gives us some flexibility. Like, we can pull Aventurine for the Fei Xiao team, since we're going vertical on her. We can pull Rappa now, so that the Super Break team has some AoE capability. And, we still have 2 pulls left. We can pull something like Herda and Jade. And so this gives us, nice single target potential, a lot of multi-target potential. And then this Jade, she can play on the Fei Xiao team if we at some point upgrade her to E1, or she can stick around with Herda. And so, this is probably a lot more interesting to play. So 1 vertical team and then 1 horizontal team. So how did the pulls go on this account? As I said before, because I'm going for the Fugue Super Break team, as soon as I logged in, I took the free Himiko from the selector and the free Ruin May from the store. On the starter banner, we pulled Clara, and then on the standard banner, we pulled Clara's E1 and Himiko's E1. If you care about collecting characters, then you can probably wait to see how your standard banner pulls go before picking from the selector. But unfortunately, in my opinion, out of all the standard characters, only Himiko is worth investing in. Even Bronya has fallen off and has a hard time finding a spot in modern teams. On the standard banner, we also pulled 2 copies of Dance Dance Dance. My advice for new players is to not superimpose your first 2 copies. This is a viable light cone for most Harmony characters, and it's very likely you will need 2 separate copies at some point. On the premium banner, after 74 pulls, we got our Fugue, and then after 80 pulls, we got Castoris. I next start pulling for Castoris' light cone. As I said, I like to pull the DPS premium light cone. At this point, I'm also concerned about this account being relatable because we won both of our 50-50s, but fortunately, we lose after 70 pulls to Clara's light cone. I will get Castoris' light cone next week after farming some more Stellar Jade from Simulated Universe. Alright, so where does that leave us on this account? After the first week, we've got the Trailblaze level 55, very close to that important Trailblaze 60. We have also been able to assemble our core teams. In my case, it's Castoris, Gallagher, Pella, and RMC for Team 1, and on Team 2, it's going to be Himiko, Fugue, Ruin Mei, and Lynx. And because TL50 we can get our characters to 70s, we can actually get started on the endgame. Although it's not that important that we do that, because without traces or ascensions we just won't be able to get that far anyway. So for example, Gallagher, without his ascension, he can't heal on his attack after his ultimate. Castoris is missing her ascension trace. But we have made some progress on that front. With the trace tricks that we discussed earlier, Castoris is traced out, so she just needs to ascend and she's ready to go into the end game. Same goes for Ruin Mei. For her, we've been able to get her important traces out so far. But as you can see, most of these characters are still stuck at 60 just because we don't have enough daily energy yet to ascend all of them. So over the coming week, the goal is to get our Trailblaze level to 60, get these characters ascended, and flush out some of their other traces. So subscribe and like if you want to see part 2. Next week will be a relic guide showing you how to farm relics, how to use all of this fuel that we have accumulated, and I recommended to save up to get a nice set of relics for your teams to be able to clear the endgame quickly. I'll see you in the next one. If you want to stick around to see the builds for these characters, you can do that now.